Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. You are looking at the cover of the announcement for this week's podcast interview with Reverend Jenn Cormier. Oh my goodness, I did it again. Cormier. And the topic, as usual, is the coexistence, joy, pain, and truth. And I am Misha Safran. I am a joy and resilience coach, parenting coach, academic life coach, working with families to bring joy and resilience, to take the frustrating experiences and turn them into fun, to take the tired, fatiguing overwhelm and turn it into adventure that you will never forget, but in a positive way. So, my guest today is Jenn, and she is a grief guide who brings 20 years of experience in the healing arts to clients who are moving through life transitions and grief. Jenn is committed to the evolution of how we relate to death and walk with our grief. She is the creator of the Transform Your Grief Immersion Program, a unique, holistic group program that addresses the cognitive, emotional, and physical layers of each individual. This is what Jenn says. When we shift our perspective to include our body in our grieving process and see grief as a creative collaborator in our lives, we open the door to healing and peace. Welcome, Jenn. Oh, let me unmute you. There, now you welcome Jenn.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Very happy to have you here. So it's interesting, we talk on this podcast about joy and pain and the truth of it all and this coexistence, right? And when we lose a loved one, or in the process of losing a loved one, or lose a job, or lose a friendship, or lose a home, grief is like this total natural, organic representation of the coexistence of joy and pain.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're experiencing all them. I mean, I remember when my mom passed away, I remember her laughter. It was contagious. Her smile, her blue sparkling eyes. I mean, there was no one that left meeting my mom that didn't feel special. When I think of these things, I feel joy. And then I can feel it right now, the tears and just come up because I miss her so much.
Yeah.
Right? And you walk through with people. So I'm going to just hand the mic over to you and let you say whatever is on your heart and mind right now about that.
Oh, thank you, Misha. Yeah, it just really, if we didn't have that upwelling of love, if we didn't have that connection and that joy with that person that we lost, there would be no grief process, right? So it's really, we move through this grief process because we loved so deeply, because we had such a connection. And I think that most people could relate to that. I think that feels true for many people. And just want to speak to the fact that the grieving process, it really is, I see it as a transformational healing process. So sometimes when we hear the word grief, we think, let's see, Webster's dictionary, what does it say? Grief equals intense, sad experience, that grief itself is the intense sadness. And I see it now, over the last decade, I've come to understand grief really as something very big. It's like it's a process that moves me, and it is big enough to contain all the emotions. So it contains the sadness, it contains the, anger, disappointment. It also contains the joy and the love and the beauty. So all of those things really get woven through the process, the walking through the grief. So I think that how you're speaking about it, on your podcast, really this coexistence of joy and pain. And this is the work that you do with people. It's like how to source our resilience and our strength, through all of these experiences. It's a really beautiful way to approach life. So,
Yeah. And it's interesting when you were talking about, I learned after my mom passed away, some people did say to me, when there is deep love, there's deep grief, right? Yeah. And I have several friends who, when their family member passed away, there was deep grief because they did not have that deep love. They were
Mm,
grieving the fact that now it was finite. There was not going to be that deep love ever in
mm,
that relationship,
yeah.
right? And so grief, just for those who are listening, grief comes on for so many different reasons. And yet, through the process, you're going to have a lot of feelings that coexist. Whether it's deep love and deep joy, or whether it's strictly like sadness and pain and anger,
Yeah.
they all coexist. I'm sure, I don't know if you work with your clients with the 4 stages of grief, or maybe there are more stages than 4, because it certainly felt like that to me. But I'd love to hear more about how what is this transformation that you talk about when you're working with your clients?
Yeah, the transformation really is it is the process of really allowing. I think it's a process of allowing, because there's going to be pain with loss, whether it's because I loved my parents so much and we had this amazing relationship, or like you just spoke to, maybe we didn't have that beautiful relationship, and that connection and love was missing, and now I'm grieving the
Yeah.
dream of what will never be. And I think that that's something that happens a lot. It's like, not only are we grieving the person, but we're grieving the loss of the dream. So,
Right.
and that happens with divorce, and that happens with breakup, and that happens in so many other ways, beyond death. So I like to also speak to all
Right.
of these littler things that we grieve on the everyday, and I
Yeah.
really see grief now as a process that moves through my days and my weeks,
Mm-hmm.
just like my work rhythm,
Yeah.
or my rhythm of mothering. It's like it's a rhythm of grieving. And I every Sunday I go to the farmers market and I gather these beautiful flowers, and over the course of the week they
Mm-hmm.
start wilting, and then the next weekend I bring the flowers to the ocean because they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
just bringing grief down from, it's got to be this very deep process because there's a death of a parent or a child or a spouse, to we can grieve the things that that we lost that are smaller, that there's
Mm-hmm.
and it's a great way to practice for the larger things, to bring in
Yeah.
the beauty of flowers and then to watch them wilt, and then to take them back to nature, and
Mm-hmm.
see, it's a cycle in these smaller moments. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that is one part of this, transforming our grief, is to shift our perspective and to see it in a new way. And that's really what was
Mm-hmm.
so healing for me. My dad is why I got into this work. He died in
I was just
2020.
going to ask you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Okay.
died in 2012.
Okay.
And
Okay.
um, I had a really, we have those moments in time where somebody says just the right thing to shift us in that
Mm-hmm.
moment and to give us that new perspective. And I had a couple of mentors that told me, I didn't know what to do when my dad was dying, and he
Mm-hmm.
died. My role and my purpose as his
Mm-hmm.
daughter, sort of as a co-pilot on his healing journey, was no longer. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
happens for a
Right.
lot of caregivers that are going through, you know, uh, a terminal diagnosis, and
Mm-hmm.
their whole, um, purpose gets wrapped around, that role. And then when there's
Mm-hmm.
the death, it's like, well, now what? Not only did I lose this
Mm-hmm.
person, but I also lost part of who I am, and part of
Absolutely.
how I see my own value in the world, right? And how I am in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's a reorientation to not only lose the person, but to reorient, oh, I'm no longer a caregiver. Now what? Now what am I?
Yeah, I remember, when my grandmother passed away, because I was visiting her often. I had a newborn, and I would bring my newborn to spend time with her. And after she passed, I found myself driving down that road, going, "Oh, wait, that's not the way I'm going," and I had to turn around and go a different way. I remember after my mom passed away, going to pick up the phone to call to check in, and like, oh, that's right, or going to the cabinet thinking I had to pull out her medications, and oh, they're not there, nor is she, right? So it's like the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
transformation of our role as the loved one or care provider. Yeah, it's a complete shift. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. A total shift. So I think, transformation happens. Sometimes it happens in an instant, right?
Mhm,
You know,
mhm,
Often it happens in a process that's a little bit longer, over the course
mhm,
of a year, over the course of a
mhm,
season, and shifting perspective is really helpful in igniting a transformation. So for
mhm,
me, for
mhm,
example, um, I called up my mentors, Lewis and Barb, and I said, I don't know what to do. What do I do? And they said, well, why don't you see, you can see grief now as your teacher. You can take grief by the hand for the next year. And that's how it's
mhm,
traditionally done. You're going to walk with grief through all the seasons, all the milestones, all the birthdays, all the holidays.
mhm. Oh
And,
yeah.
at the end of that cycle, at the end of that year, we can hold a soul releasing ceremony for you and your mom. And I had
Mm,
never heard of anything like that. And it gave me this spaciousness to really
mhm,
allow my grief to be a process and actually to
mhm,
think about, well, what would it look like if I walked with my grief and I took it by the hand and I
mhm,
let it be my teacher? So, I look at the beginning, I was really literal with it. I got a walking stick, my
mhm.
dad's old walking stick, and I would walk
Mm,
with my grief, and I would go, because my dad and I did that. We would walk in the woods together with our rescue
mm,
dog Daisy. So I would go in the same loops in the woods with Daisy, and then
mm,
because I'm a dancer, I started setting a timer and just allowing myself to be with grief. And what came was movement, and
mm,
and I would play. Some days I would play my dad's favorite songs and write down the lyrics, and some days I would
mhm,
light a candle and walk in a circle with a walking stick. And and by doing this day after day for 15 minutes, I just was like, okay, grief, what do you got for me today? You know,
mhm, mhm.
and
Yeah.
doing that day after day, it turned into a ritual, and something started happening. And it ended up becoming a dance piece that I offered up 3 times over the course of that year of grieving. Um,
Mm,
so, so for me, my transformation really came with, I think of them as different medicines that help in our transformative process. Nature
mhm,
was medicine for me.
mhm,
Movement was medicine for me.
mhm,
Um, Doing my meditation practice, breathing, breath work,
mhm,
sound, singing was
mhm,
medicine for me. So I just consciously brought in all these things that I knew to be beneficial and medicine for me, and
mhm.
brought them into my day really consciously.
So, would you say that as you walked with your grief, that joy has opened up more for you, as
Absolutely.
opposed to avoiding the grief and just
Uh,
saying, "Ah, screw you, grief. You're not showing up
yes.
today."
Absolutely. And that's what I found for myself, and that's what I'm finding for my clients, because they're willing
Mhm,
to lean in and they're like, I'm going to step
mhm,
into a transform your grief group immersion
mhm,
program and really lean into this
mhm,
grief.
mhm,
What they're not doing is they're not overworking. They're not shoving it into a corner or drinking it or eating it, and they're like, okay, I'm going to show up for this and reach out, and
mhm,
I'm going to connect with other people who are also
mhm,
going through a deep experience, and I'm going to
mhm,
be able to share my stories, share myself, be seen, be witnessed, be understood.
mhm,
um,
mhm,
and by doing that, and by leaning in, then what I think, how I think the joy comes in is that we're no longer um, damming up the places inside. So it's like, if
right.
we're not allowing our grief experience, we're holding tight, and we're
Mhm,
creating
mhm,
more suffering. It's like, of course we're going to have
mhm,
pain, but if we keep opening to what is in any moment, then everything can still flow. And if things can flow
mhm,
through, then the next thing that's going to come through is going to be the next natural emotion, which will be then, it might move from intense sadness to hurt to anger to disappointment, then maybe peace. Then after
Mhm.
peace, we can have some excitement and joy, so then all
Mhm.
of the emotions can really coexist because
Mhm.
they're all flowing through. And
Yeah.
I see that to really, really be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would imagine, I don't think anybody is going to be surprised at what I say, but this last year, 15 months, has been a huge amount of loss for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so, at all different levels, I'm sure all of those emotions have completely come in and occupied everyone's heart and mind. Not that it didn't before, but this year in particular, I think that we feel less unique around the death that we're experiencing because so many have across the globe. Um, so as a grief guide, how is your work different from other bereavement groups or programs?
That's a great question. Um, so I've experienced some bereavement groups that I've gone to over
Mhm.
time, and one of them, for example, met weekly for a couple of hours, and I enjoyed the experience to be able to sit and share and to listen. Um,
Mhm.
but it was very cerebral. It was very much in the head.
Yeah.
And I noticed when I was there that many of the people had a loss, they lost their husband or somebody, 8 years ago, many years ago. And
Mm.
they were getting some support from the group, but I could still really feel some suffering there. And my sense was, and this has been confirmed since, my sense was that the folks who were suffering the most didn't have dance practice, yoga practice, massage therapy in
Mm.
their life. They weren't
Mhm.
getting their grief to actually move through their body. So
Mhm.
my lens when I come to grief work really is from my expertise, and that's been in the last 20 years. Um, I'm a certified yoga teacher from several different traditions, yoga therapy.
Mhm.
Um, I worked for 18 years as a Pilates instructor, helping people
Mhm.
move the pain through their body. And a lot of times that pain was fibromyalgia. It was low back pain that was undiagnosed. Doctors couldn't find the source of the pain for their low back pain. So
Mhm.
hip pain, back pain, um, different symptoms that were unexplainable in the medical world that I realize now
Mhm.
looking back, oh, I was really working with their grief. That was
Mhm. Mhm.
emotional pain that needed to be moved, through their
Mhm.
bodies. So that's how my work is different, I think, than a lot of the groups that you'll find, bereavement groups that you'll find that are very, very much sort of talk based, which I think is very
Mhm. Mhm.
important. And it's important to be able to share and be heard and received and understood. And
Mhm.
the when we step a little more holistically and we bring the body into it, it's so
Right.
much more powerful because we can really move that emotion that does physically, it does get stuck in the body. We can actually move it through. So that's something that I teach is
Yeah.
little 3 minute, okay, what can we do in 3 minutes on a daily basis? We can take out of our tool
Mm.
basket and pick
Mhm.
up, to get movement happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I know that we're short on time. I just have one other question, and then I really want you
Yeah.
to be able to tell people about your free training that's coming up. I did put
Yeah.
comments in the chat for people who are watching, but those who are listening on the replays are watching. You'll be able to connect with Jenn if you are grieving, you're struggling to walk through your grief and trying to either push it aside or having just a hard time with something recently.
Yeah.
But so, what I would love to ask Jenn is, you know, when we work with grief, it can feel sad and dark and challenging. Do you find that that is your reality, that there's sadness and dark more often than joy, or are you finding that you have a balance of that? Because you're a grief coach or guide, but you also have been experiencing your own grief.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'd just love to hear you speak to that.
Yeah, I'm alive, right? So anyone
Yes, yes,
alive,
you are. I can vouch for that.
I think. It's just like
Yes,
pinch
I'm
myself.
vouching for
Am
that.
I?
You are alive.
Check, check.
Yes, yes, you are.
Um,
Check, check. Yeah, I
you
can't
know,
pinch you because it's
pinch
virtual,
me
but you are.
virtual.
Let me
Yes.
try.
Thank you, Misha. Thank you, Misha. At least we both think we're both here anyway.
Yeah, 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 yeah. If
So
anybody else knows that we're here, would you please put it in the comments? Yes, Jen. Yes, Misha, you are alive. I'd love to know what you think. All right,
let us
sorry. Go
know
ahead,
what.
Jen.
Let us know. Are we a hologram? Are we here? Is it all a dream? Anyway, that's another podcast, right?
Are you
But
on acid hallucinating
yeah,
and seeing
yeah,
two beautiful women talk
yeah.
about grief and pain? No, I'm just kidding.
What is it? What is it? So assuming that I am here and alive in a human body, like we think, I'm going to go through, loss, right? Or perceived loss of all the things that I love. So, um, yes, I think that I'm experiencing the pain at every loss of a dream, every, my car that's going to have, 200 and whatever thousand miles on it. I'm going to have to say goodbye at some point, just some little things. So yes. And I think that my, I don't know. I haven't actually thought of like, a self-assessment of, what's my grief to joy or my sadness to joy, ratio. But um, I think that I am consciously, what's different now than my life, maybe, 15 years ago, is that I'm consciously cultivating gratitude, which is not new. Many people have heard of, gratitude journals, and it's a common practice now, right? Cultivating gratitude, cultivating beauty in my life, cultivating connection, connection with other humans, also connection with animals, connection with nature, connection with the elements. And by consciously cultivating gratitude, beauty, connection, movement, by bringing those to the forefront of my consciousness and practicing simple habits. I have one of my clients calls them, I love Jen's spiritual snacks. She'll give us 3-minute spiritual snacks. By, by,
Awesome.
by practicing those, I feel like I'm bringing whatever process that is moving through me of grief, just letting it move. So I'm not gripping around it. And because of that, I have access to more peace because I come back to my center more quickly from that practice.
Wonderful.
Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's
that's
that's what
great.
I think is different in my life now than if I look back 15 years or so ago. And it's been it's been a
Yeah,
slow build. It's not like a sudden thing, but over the years. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, well, that was very refreshing. Thank you. So I'm going to show everybody, I'm going to put the ticker, it's called a ticker at the
Oh,
bottom
look at
here.
that.
So Jen's 5-day free virtual retreat. And whoa, wait a minute. Why is there a question mark on there? It didn't have a question mark. Anyways,
Exclamation
Jenn,
mark.
tell us
Yeah.
about, I know, exclamation mark. Okay, Jenn, tell us about your upcoming training, your virtual retreat coming up. I'd love to know more.
Sure, absolutely. Can you hear me okay? I've got a
Yeah,
window open and there's like
no, you're good.
landscaping noise. Okay. Let me know if it gets funny.
Okay.
So coming up in 2 weeks on the 28th of June, I have a 5-day virtual retreat. It's a mini retreat, so an hour every day, where I'm going to invite people onto Zoom
Mm-hmm.
to move through a process of 5 steps to walk through grief with more grace. So
Okay.
I'm going to offer, one of these little spiritual snacks, one of the tools that I've been using over the last decade that's really helped me continue to keep the movement happening in my grief process. And this is what I'm using
Mm-hmm.
now with my clients who have come to me with, divorces and death of a spouse and, just whatever
Mm-hmm.
loss that they have. And these tools are, they're simple. It's just that you need to, you know, learn them and then decide to practice them a little bit every day. So I'll be offering that.
Right.
You know, there'll be a little storytelling. There'll be an opportunity for people to share a little bit and connect if they want. It's totally optional.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been offering this as a by donation or free event at least once per season. So
Nice. Okay.
this is what I'm offering as a multi-day event this summer. So June 28th through July 2nd, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And for those of you who are watching, the link is in the comments, but it should also be in the post, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook. Those of you who are on Podbean listening to the replay, you should also have the link to this in your Podbean comment section. I'm still learning all that, but if you all can tell, Jenn is very soothing and calm, and she's definitely the right person for helping support walk through loss and grief. And I hope you'll take her up on it, because it's 5 steps to walk through grief with grace sounds like Jenn. So, yeah. Anything else you want to share with everyone, or a tip they can use to walk through their grief while they wait for this wonderful training to begin in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, you know, I think the simplest tip that I can offer up is to actually physically walk. You know, that's where I started in
Mm,
my grief process. You know, I know that I like to look at grief as, you know, moving through different seasons. You know, where we
mhm.
really start off, if we have a major loss in our life, um, it's like we start off in winter. You know, it's icy, it's frozen, we can't move. You know, that sort
Yeah.
of. I remember that when my dad died, I was like, I described it as liquid lead, you know, fetal position on the couch, you know, not able to get up.
Yeah.
And and just to give yourself, number one, some gentleness. If that's the place that you're in and you manage to find yourself listening to this podcast, I mean, huge pat on the back. Congratulations for
Right.
finding
Yep.
something. You know, the fact that you're listening to my voice right now, it took an immense amount of energy to pick up a device, click a thing, find a thing, and get yourself here. So
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
just honoring each little step you take for yourself, because it does take so much to get, you know, the least bit vertical. And just
Mhm.
to be gentle with yourself when you can't show up, when you can't get the things done, just giving yourself permission to sleep, giving yourself permission to nap, to take baths, to do anything that's soothing, to accept nurturing and help from those around you, a neighbor that wants to bring you food or whatever. Just accept,
Yeah.
help, be gentle with you, and allow yourself to sleep. Number one. So I think that's sort of in
Absolutely.
that winter phase of grief. And that might,
Mhm.
you know, that might come and go. So if that's where you are today, just
Mhm.
allow for that, welcome that,
Mhm.
just be in that welcoming everything space. Um, and then, you know, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? When we're going through pain, we're like, no, but I don't want this. I don't want
Mhm.
to be
Right.
flat on the couch. But the paradox is when we go, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to let myself be flat on the couch. Once we give ourselves
Mhm.
full permission to be there, at some point, our bodies will go, oh, now I've got to go pee, and now I've got to get up and, you know, go, and then we have to get up, and then we'll end up upright at some point. So don't worry, you know, don't
Right.
worry, you'll get
Right.
upright at some point, and then it's
Yeah.
actually, we can actually move quicker to the next thing because we gave ourselves
Mhm.
permission not to, you know. So
Mhm.
I just want to
Yeah.
speak to that little bit of a paradox there. And then number two,
Yeah.
once you are able to get up and you're able to do a little something, just simply going for a walk. That is how I processed after my dad died, when I was in really deep in my grief process, is walking in nature. And
Mhm.
right now in my life, you know, it's been 10 years, but I'm doing a lot of work with people moving through grief and holding, you know, space for 2.5 hours on calls and things like that. And how
Mhm.
I move through it is I stand up, I turn off all my devices, and I go outside and I walk around the block. So
Mm.
just that simple action of whatever that is for you. Some people it might be, a 5-mile walk through the woods or around a lake or something. Other people it might just be to the mailbox and back.
Right.
Some people it might be, okay, walk around 1 block, but whatever you have capacity for, actually walking outside in the fresh air is so healing, and it's so simple. And that is something that I would recommend.
Awesome.
I know it's
awesome.
not,
Thank you.
it's not flashy. It's not flashy, but it helps.
Well, I think it's simplicity. I think you and I heard a phrase recently, keep it simple, sister.
Yeah.
But you know what? Keep it simple, seriously.
Yes.
Like, seriously, please keep it simple.
Yeah.
Because I think that we can get overwhelmed and paralyzed if there are so many options, right? So I think simplicity is really beautiful. So thank you, Jenn. Thank you for being our guest here on the podcast, Coexistence, Joy, Pain, and Truth. And for all of you listening, again, reminder, if you are either walking through grief right now, or know that it's in the near future, or it's been a year or two and you're still struggling, it is never too late to get help. And it's never too early to get help. The more we reach out, I won't say it'll go away, but the easier walking through our grief can be, especially if we're basically grieving with others. So definitely take up Jenn on her free virtual retreat. I'm sure it's going to be soothing. You'll walk away with lots of wonderful tips and steps and things to support you. And great. Thank you, everyone. And then also just next week, guys, remember, next Thursday, same time, same place, I will actually be hosting a panel of speakers to talk about the upcoming Joy and Resilience Retreat, July 10th, for moms of preteens and teens. This is going to be your day. So don't miss this wonderful panel next Thursday. Same time, same Misha channel, because I'm not a bat. And thank you, everybody. Love and joy to all.
Oh, thank you, Misha.
You're absolutely welcome. Glad to have you here, Jenn. Bye.
Bye, everyone.